Welcome to Sacred Resilience. I am your host, Christy Lynn Stoken. Thank you for being here. This podcast exists for moments when healing feels confusing, lonely, or misunderstood, and for the quiet courage it takes to keep choosing yourself anyway. Today we're talking about DARVO, what it is, why it's so damaging, and how it affects victims emotionally, mentally, and physically. But we're also talking about something just as important and often overlooked: re-victimization, especially when it comes from people with whom we expected to feel safe. If this episode touches something tender for you, please take care of yourself. Pause when you need to. You're allowed to protect your heart and your nervous system. DARVO is a psychological response pattern that often appears when someone is confronted about harmful behavior. It stands for deny. The person denies the behavior happened at all. Attack. They criticize or blame the person who spoke up. Reverse victim and offender. They position themselves as the one being harmed. In simple terms, DARVO is what happens when the math isn't mathing. You name the harm, and somehow you end up being treated as the problem. It can sound like, that never happened. You're too sensitive. You're attacking me. I'm the one who's hurt by this. And suddenly the original issue disappears, and the focus becomes your reaction, your tone, your timing, or your character. DARVO doesn't just hurt emotionally. It alters a person's relationship with their own reality. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused or ashamed, replayed events over and over trying to figure out what you did wrong, felt physically sick after speaking your truth, began to doubt your memory, intentions, or worth, guess what? There is nothing flipping wrong with you. Those are normal trauma responses to psychological reversal. DARVO is especially damaging because it targets people who are empathetic, self-reflective, want repair, not conflict, those that are trying to heal. In other words, it targets good faith. Many survivors don't recognize DARVO because it doesn't always look aggressive. It can be subtle, spiritualized, or framed as concern. It often can come from people who claim to love us. And because it's confusing, people internalize it. They don't think something harmful just happened. They think, what's wrong with me? And that question, what's wrong with me, is often the moment where re-victimization begins. So today, we're going to talk about how DARVO works, how it affects victims emotionally, mentally, and physically, how it connects to re-victimization, what to do if you can't leave your current situation, and how to begin reclaiming your internal authority. Let's start by looking more closely at how DARVO actually operates and why it's so destabilizing to the nervous system. Emotionally, victims often feel shame, guilt, fear of speaking up again, a deep sense of self-doubt. Mentally, it can create confusion, obsessive thoughts, memory doubt, difficulty trusting your own perception. Physically, the body may respond with tightness in the chest or throat, nausea, headaches, panic responses, exhaustion, trouble sleeping. This happens because DARVO forces your system to hold on to two competing realities: what you experienced versus what you're being told is true. That internal conflict is traumatic. I want to share something personal here because this is how I came to understand DARVO more deeply. For a long time, I didn't fully understand re-victimization, why someone who's already been harmed can end up feeling hurt all over again while trying to heal. Recently, after sharing part of my story, a friend responded in ways that left me feeling confused. And for the first time, I understood how getting it from both sides can actually leave a person feeling powerless and silenced, alone. Things like, Is it really that bad? It's the season for forgiveness, after all. All guys are the same. It wouldn't be any different with someone else. You're not 30 anymore. Just take a Xanax and listen to some music. And I want to say this clearly. That person may not have intended harm. But impact matters more than intent when trauma is involved. Because what happened inside me felt familiar. I felt doubt, shame. I felt pressure to minimize what I had lived through. I felt like I was being unreasonable for still being affected. I felt like all the healing I had done was for nothing. Worst of all, I started to question myself and wonder, is she right? And suddenly I understood I wasn't just being dismissed. I was being re-victimized. As I researched re-victimization in Darvo and the overlap, it just became impossible to ignore. Darvo doesn't only come from abusers. It can show up in secondary relationships, friends, family members, places of worship, when your pain makes others uncomfortable. Here's how it can sound. Deny. Is it really that bad? Attack. You need to forgive. Reverse victim and offender. You're being unfair. He seems like a nice guy. And suddenly, the person who was harmed is being asked to be quieter, be more grateful, be less affected, move on faster. That's not healing. That's re-victimization through invalidation. When Darvo comes from the person who harmed you, it destabilizes you. When it comes from someone you trusted to be safe, it can collapse your sense of support entirely. Getting it from both sides can leave a victim feeling powerless, isolated, afraid to speak at all, unsure who's safe. And one of the most painful thoughts begins to form. Maybe no one will ever really believe me. That's not weakness. That's a nervous system trying to survive without allies. I have found healing begins when you realize this. Confusion is not a flaw. It's a signal. When you feel disoriented after an interaction, it often means your boundaries were crossed. Your reality was challenged. Your nervous system detected threat. You don't need consensus to trust yourself. Ask instead, what did my body feel during that interaction? What shifted in me afterward? Would I speak to someone I love this way? Clarity comes from anchoring inward, not convincing outward. Unfortunately, not everyone can leave a relationship, workplace, family system, or co-parenting dynamic. If you can't leave, the goal becomes containment and protection, not confrontation. Some ways to break that cycle are to stop engaging in circular arguments, limit emotional disclosure with unsafe people, which is hard for us who overshare. Name it to yourself when it happens. Call it out for your own awareness. Document the experience for yourself, not to prove anything, but to ground and acknowledge it and your feelings. Build outside validation with trauma-informed support. I would like to share some boundary responses that I have found helpful. These are calm, grounded responses that don't invite confrontation or debate. I'm not seeking your approval. I'm simply sharing my experience. Forgiveness doesn't require erasing harm. I'm not asking for agreement, just respect. That framing isn't helpful for my healing. I trust my experience, even if others don't understand it. You are allowed to protect your peace. Always remember that. You don't owe anyone an opportunity to re-traumatize you. There are other resources available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, of course, at 1-800-799-SAFE. Psychology Today Therapist Directory. Search for trauma-informed or narcissistic abuse specialists. I have a journal coming out called Sacred Truth in January, which will be helping people go from that haze to what's real. And then somatic support, YouTube videos of gentle movement, breath work, grounding practices, also helpful. If no one has told you this yet, let me say it clearly. Your confusion was a clue. Your pain was real. Your body knew before your mind did. Healing from Darvo isn't about becoming rigid. It's about becoming rooted. This is Sacred Resilience. Until next time, be gentle with yourself.